Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain. And the itsy bitsy spider crawled up the spout again. That's your favorite song. Again? Again? The itsy bitsy spider crawled up the water spout. Down came the rain.
All of our competencies with regard to understanding child development and understanding dual language learners and understanding mental health issues for young children and understanding special needs, all of these competencies weave together into something that has a character in the early years of life that is different than the character that it has in later years.
Oh, a little bit more, actually.
What's important about early childhood is that it's early childhood, that it is a time in life when children are laying down foundations that are going to make a difference in terms of their relationships with the world around them, with how they learn, with how they think about things, with how they handle mistakes, with how they deal with things that don't work, with how they feel about working hard to accomplish things. That's what we're doing. And that's why it's important, and that's why it's special.
The connection between studies of child development and what we're doing with young children in the early childhood setting is critical. And it provides an essential foundation for all the work that we do to prepare teachers of young children. So when you look at the areas of research that are most informative for our field, there have been incredible advances in terms of what we know about how children think and how they develop knowledge, how they construct knowledge. That has really influenced then how we theorize about the child as a learner and the adult as someone who supports that meaning-making child. So as we think about how do we prepare teachers to work with young children, we need a very strong foundation in knowing who the child is.
You notice that we need something there. Will any of these things work?
One of the things that the study of child development provides us is that children are meaning-making creatures from the moment of birth. They arrive at birth gathering information from the world around them, organizing that information, constructing concepts about themselves, about others, about the object world. That process continues throughout early childhood. What we can be mindful of, those of us who are preparing teachers to work with young children, is how do we help teachers think about the image of the child as a learner and the image of a teacher who supports that child in learning, and what does it mean to teach and to learn when you're working with children from birth through 5 years of age. The organizing principles that I would hope that a teacher preparing to work with young children be offered include a very strong foundation in the image of the child as one who constructs understanding from everyday experiences.
And so developmentally appropriate practice has to draw not only on what we know about developmental science and typical patterns and trends in terms of children's social emotional development, their cognitive development, the development as whole people, but it also calls on us to really think about who's in front of us in terms of what we know about typical development.
Can I have that? I was snoozing it first.
But also the individual, the culture that person is in. Who is this person who's reacting this way?
Later I can give you Mom.
What we know about typical pattern and trend and what we know about how children learn and how their behavior changes. It's like a reference library. We use that as we're working with individual children, individual families in individual contexts as a resource. But none of that answers the question of what do I do in the classroom this afternoon?
The circle was very, very sad, and mommy asked him,
Baby, why are you crying? Because nobody want to play with me. Why you not as the square?
Because I can't answer that question until I also factor into what I'm thinking about the needs and interests of those children, the needs and interests of those families, the challenges that we're facing, what's going on in our community, the context that we're in, who's going to be there in the classroom that day, what kind of caring community I'm trying to build, and what the skills and competencies of the children are in that process.
Uncle.
Dump it out and try again.
Uncle.
Angel?
Yeah?
Are you calling Angel? She's outside right now. Do you see her from there? Thinking about her?
Up.
Up. You're thinking about going up? We're going to stay here for a little bit. Do you want to read a story with us? There's lots of books here. You can take a look outside and say hello.
Early care and education is all about relationships. To me, that's the way I define it, is that it's all about relationship building.
You can go get it? What are you looking for?
This goes back a lot to how important it is for children to feel emotionally secure, so that then they have the freedom to explore, to learn, to be self-confident. And all that comes from the kind of nurturing and the kinds of interactions and relationships that they have had in that growing up period.
You went around. You went around.
Part of our image as a classroom is we've got a triangle of relationships. We've got children, teachers, and the families. And so how do we engage in dialogue alongside the families occasionally so that they too can inform our thinking about their children's ways of learning and thinking?
I think that the children want to spend time with their families and their friends and their parents and their grandparents. Some of our children come from very extended families, so there's other people in the home. And I know that they are very important, and they too are part of the child's development. So the family part, for a teacher to say to a parent, to a grandparent, to an auntie, here's what we do together.
2, 3.
Well, in working with families, what really came across is that is the context for each child. They are the primary caretakers of that child, and that child will learn values, will be able to do things within that context. I think one of the challenges in terms of getting students to be acquainted with the impact of families is for them to see the differences and also to be open to those differences and to be respectful of those differences and how much impact they have on the way that people raise young children.
All that asphalt goes down in the grader,
And it flattens
paver
it out.
goes over, and what does it do? It flattens it out.
California developed the foundations and the framework that describe what we want children to learn and how we want to encourage teachers to provide for that learning.
This one's big, this one's short, and this one's tiny.
Emotional, cognitive language, motor, all of those domains of learning. For example, young children accomplish this incredible agenda of motor milestones.
Get back.
How do we support that process of exploring what they can do with their bodies in a way that is very natural and that allows them to use their bodies freely in order to move through these motor milestones? In the back of a teacher's mind, there is a sense of these are the concepts and skills that I know the children are in the process of making sense of. With respect to science, with respect to math, with respect to language, literacy, social understanding, etc. So as I set up a meaningful context for children to engage in figuring something out, I'm aware of the possibility that children may reveal their thinking around some of these concepts and skills.
I need a plate. You need a plate, okay. Yeah. For my bean.
Play really is the vehicle that allows us to integrate the curriculum, because children within play are going to effectively accomplish language, cognitive, social, emotional, physical development, all wrapped into one. And so it's really incumbent on the early childhood teacher to keep that awareness of what are the skills and concepts that we want children to learn.
I got carrots. Teacher, what is this?
It is a vest.
Carrots for you.
Do you like it? Looks pretty flashy, huh?
So when a child enters the room, there are play spaces that are inviting the child to discover a wonderful array of engaging materials.
What are those, Ayla?
These are for looking.
Oh, they're binoculars, huh?
Yeah, these are for looking like this.
Uh-huh.
How those play spaces are set up is very intentional, and this is where a well-prepared teacher or team of teachers make sure that this happens, that the play spaces can be seen as learning spaces, and that there's a lot of thought into how they're prepared as context for learning.
Fix your bike. Fix your book.
The role of the teacher in setting up the play space is very different than the traditional role of the teacher as one who imparts knowledge or creates an activity that expects a certain answer. It's important that in setting up these environments for learning for young children that we adopt an attitude of not knowing what the children are going to do precisely, or not expecting one right way of playing in those play spaces, because there is no one right way. But we know we've been successful as teachers if we have children who are deeply engaged in play, and if they are using the materials well.
Okay, you make a letter, and when you see one like this, that means that's mine. When you see one like that, that means it's yours. Oh, you have to put an envelope.
The adult part of it is really to observe what is interesting them and then let them lead you in terms of what you are going to plan for them, so that we set out things that we think that they seem to be interested, and then to focus on what they do with that. And from that, then that would give us information about how to expand that knowledge. And that's where the adult can be helpful, to expand, to enlarge that particular interest.
In early childhood settings, teachers are always thinking on two levels. Who are the children in my classroom? And how do I meet each child where they are in terms of what they are in the process of learning and where they are going next?
Oh.
So I need to know each of my children and each of my children's families well enough so that I can plot a journey for that particular child that I can do with that particular child's family, so that we can assure that child is well on his or her way in their journey towards knowledge.
Sebastian, I need to...
We may have children coming in with different languages. We may have children coming in with different experiences with peers. So every child will be different in terms of how they present themselves. And each child's curriculum journey will be different.
Does it feel just like the ice?
Having said that, then, I'm organizing context for learning for my whole group of children. So I'm also planning for the group of children. So I'm always working at 2 levels.
Look at that. You know, I noticed that this side is the same as that side.
With respect to the individualized planning for a child, I think it's most relevant when we think of what are those aspects of learning that I can offer that child that will support that child in learning alongside other children within the play environment.
And then what if I put 2?
What shape is that? What did you make?
I made a square.
Oh.